Welcome to the Everyday GSD podcast. Today's special guest is, I'm going to say your name properly, David Fridovich.
That's right. Yeah.
But I have to also say former 3-star general.
Yeah, retired.
Retired, thank you.
Yeah.
Retired 3-star general, which for those of you who don't know that, what a 3-star general is in rank, it's an 09, so it is the top of the food chain. I believe there's a 4-star general. However, let's not kid ourselves, 3-star general is extremely impressive. 37 years in the military.
Yes.
And I've got a little a bio on you to some degree, but let's not kid ourselves. As I said earlier, 37 years. If I read everything that you've accomplished in your 37 years, you would probably walk out and tell me you don't want to be on the show anymore. And it's not that it's boring; it's actually extremely impressive. But the show is more about you talking to me. So I am going to highlight a couple things. You were a Green Beret. You were in charge of. Jokingly, I said a bunch of stuff, but 1st Special Forces Group, Airborne. Back in 2000, you were in charge of Operation Task Force Enduring Freedom Philippines, Republic of Philippines, January through June of 2002. You were commander of Special Operations Command Pacific. You were also the director of Center of Special Operations, U.S. Special Operations Command 2007. You were deputy commander in 2010. I mean, it goes on and on and on. So I'm actually going to stop at that because...
Yeah, good, thank you.
I appreciate that, but I want to stop because, again, 37 years, your accomplishments are amazing, and I wanted you on the show when, we're here at the Special Forces Association convention here in Plainfield, Indiana, and you're one of the speakers, and I thought it was impressive when Eve and Jeremy told me that you were willing to be on the show. Obviously, the show is about everyday GSD, people who get shit done, right? And you've been doing that for clearly a long time in your professional career as a 3-star general, but obviously you didn't go in the Army and just start off as a 3-star general. You had to make your way, and you retired as a 3-star general.
Right.
And before we go much further, I do want to say thank you for everything you've done for the country in those 37 years because it's extremely impressive.
Well, before before the music played and we started, we talked about your service as well, and the fact that almost everybody here has served, to me, says a lot. Because, again, that puts us in the 1/10 of 1%, that little mill of people who are willing to put on the cloth of the nation and go forward. And even though you're having fun doing whatever you're doing in terms of, driving boats, rescuing people, jumping out of airplanes, getting back on a different airplane and jumping again, whatever you're doing, we're serving the nation. And, having fun doing it and getting paid are two very good things, but I think the meaning of the work kept me in, as do the people. And that was, to me, one of the biggest drivers. And when I was at grad school, before I came on active duty, I had this weird conversation with this brother. I was working at an orphanage in New Orleans, and we just made sure that kids, didn't escape at night, so to speak. And it was a Catholic orphanage. And this guy told me, Brother Steve, he told me that he spent his 3 years in the Air Force trying to ruin the place. And I looked at him kind of strange. I said, here you are, this father of this order, and, it's kind of mind-boggling. He said, yeah, I just hated being in the service. And I think he did it to avoid the draft.
Right.
He went into the Air Force. And I go, hey, I get it. And when he told me that, it kind of dawned on me as I'm getting ready to go on active duty in another 6 months or so from that time, that I was not going to be that guy. I was going to go, whatever I could do, whatever I could touch, I was going to make it better for people, not worse. And this is post-Vietnam. So the whole idea of going in the military was counterintuitive. My brother was a doctor. We're first-generation Americans. So the American dream for my brother and myself and the rest of the kids in the family was, he's going to be a doctor, I'm going to be a lawyer, and that's success for my parents. And I had to break their heart and tell them, I'm not doing that. I'm going to go in and I'm going to go in the Army. And I'm going to go in the Army, and anything I can do to make the Army better and the people around me better, I'm going to go do that, which is the start point of let's get shit done.
Yeah,
So,
we can say
here we
shit.
go. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, good.
Yeah.
After all, I'm sorry, it's a podcast. I forgot where I was.
Exactly.
Yeah. There would be lists of things that you can't say. That,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
can say that here.
Well, with all due respect, you retired as a 3-star general. You can say whatever you want on this podcast.
Oh, this is good. Here we go. How much time do we have left?
We have all day.
We have all day. Yeah, plenty of time to fill.
Yeah, no, it's interesting though, because you tell that story, and the podcast is about you, but I do want to share a story when I first got out of boot camp and I went to my first ship, or a cutter as they call it.
Yeah.
It was 270 foot, and I remember I was in deck department. I was a non-rate waiting to go to A school,
right? And
everyone was like, "Oh, you're gonna hate this. It's gonna be miserable." And right as I was leaving boot camp, and I was top of my class in boot camp, and this ASM. He was an aviational survivalman, the guys that jump out of the helicopter.
Right.
He called me aside. He goes, "You know how you're going to be successful in the military, whether it's Coast Guard, Navy, Army, whatever you do?" He goes, "The people that want to drag you down, that don't like it, stay away from them." And he goes, "There's going to be a handful." And he goes, "Just stay away from them." He goes, "You're going to get on that ship," and he goes, "There's going to be people that are going to complain and complain and complain." And he goes, "But you're going to find a few that are going to they're really going to motivate you, and they're going to help you continue to GSD."
Right.
And it was good advice, because that's exactly what I did.
That's phenomenal, and that's what Brother Steve did to me. He motivated me to go, I'm not going to be that guy. The other part of it was, I think I realized early on as going into a leadership role, because you're right, you don't end up as a 3-star when you start as a second lieutenant. Those many years before,
right?
You sit there and you go, well, as a leader, every leader is a role model, and that takes on two tacks. There's a white side and a black side. The white side is, that's a good example. The black side is, I don't want to be that guy.
Right.
And what your buddy, what your ASM or whatever you said he was, what he saved you from was, hey, see that guy's a great example of a bad example. Don't be it. And you go, perfect. Because people look to that. And then after that, after second lieutenant, and you start moving up, you start to have to forge probably an ideal of consistency of behavior. That becomes your character. That becomes who you are.
It's embedded in you.
It is. And then at a certain point, you realize, wow, that those are your values. Then the opposite happens. People start looking at you and going, oh, I want to work with him. I want to be around that guy. I know what I'm going to get.
Right.
I'm going to go see what, kind of strange, but we're going to go do shit, aren't we? We go, yeah, we are going to go do shit.
Right.
So the part that's not in my bio or you didn't read was I felt I had a really, I'd say, fortunate career that people would see things like that guy did for you. They would see things in you and they would go, oh, you know what? I can trust you to get this done. I go, yeah, you can. If I told you I'm going to do it, I have it within my intellect and capability and physicality, I can go get it done.
I'm capable and competent. I can do it.
I can do it. So you want me to get it done? Yeah, okay. And that starts, again, forging, besides the intellectual part of it, it forges, the results-oriented life that you want to live.
Right.
Which is GSD. You get shit done. And you go, well, here we go. So, going from Alaska, which was just a phenomenal place because you were put out, this is back in 76 to 80. So starts in Alaska in the infantry. This is a time where we had very rudimentary gear and you carried about minus rations and you didn't have to carry water because water was all around you in the wintertime, but you skied or snowshoed everywhere.
Right.
So you were in the infantry and you were out there and it was cold as shit.
Yeah.
So everything you had that you survived with was on your back.
Right.
If you didn't bring it, you didn't have it. And you're not going to go out and kill shit. It's just a matter of, you got to have it with you. You also are put in situations that your choices are limited. You're not going to curl up and die. You got to go out and do things.
Right.
And it teaches you that regardless of how terrible it is out there, somebody's counting on you to go and do these things.
Right.
Go do them. And you can't hole up. You can't hide in a tent. You can't turtle up and be with your own self in the parka. You got to go out there and do that. And that got me ready for going from there to a bunch of college kids at Norwich University in Vermont.
In Vermont, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
a little Army-Navy game, which is Norwich versus Coast Guard Academy. And, having then learned how to be that role model, good and bad, but then also I got to teach mountain climbing and skiing, everything I had ever taught or learned in Alaska in the first 4 years. The next 3 years, I got to go teach these cadets because they had a mountain cold weather rescue team.
Yeah.
And I brought a guy who had been one of my NCOs in Alaska who knew how to ski and really seriously.
Are they called the Green Mountain Boys?
No, that's the National Guard.
Okay.
This is the Mountain Cold Weather Rescue Team at Norwich University. Yeah. And it was phenomenal. So, but then you had to live that life.
Right.
So live a life of virtue, of character, and we're going to go rappel from the top of Bolton Rock in Vermont, 431 feet down to, no one had ever done it. And we set it up and put the two ropes over and they go, who's going to go first? And I said, well, I'm going to go first. Because if it's not safe and something happens to me, I don't have to do the paperwork, right? but more than anything else, you lead from the front.
You lead
right?
from the front.
You lead from the front.
The lesson is you lead from the front.
And there were some, I don't know if you remember this, this is how you can tell you're old, the cartoon Beetle Bailey.
Okay, Beetle Bailey.
So Sergeant Snorkel sometimes finds himself on the edge of a cliff holding on to a tree.
Little stick that's hanging.
Yeah. So I'm going down off this cliff, I'm rappelling, and the rope is between these two trees, and I can't really see behind me, but I know I'm still about 100 feet down.
Right.
So I got 300
feet more to go.
To fall. I'm hooked up and I'm going, I've got to come off belay.
Yeah.
And I've got to actually let my hand go, thinking I'm going to zip down because the rope is fouled behind me.
Okay.
And I'm starting to go like this but the biggest thing was I got to let go of my brake hand.
Yeah.
And what I then realized is that the weight of the rope was enough to break it without me having to touch it. So I did have two hands free. And I unfouled the rope, got it unfouled, and then made the rest of the way. And there was a little ledge to stand on it and made it the rest of the way and felt good. But I'm going, man, I'm thinking I might be up here. I might starve to death before I get down this. But you had to be that. You had to be that first guy,
right?
Because college kids will call you. And this is again back in the early '80s,
right?
College kids will call you in a minute that, hey, you told me this is going to work,
right?
But I haven't seen it. You need to show me.
You got to show me.
So one time, same crew, and it was good that it was very physical, that you could really demonstrate. I said, you have to be able to tie with your left hand any knot. So I showed him, I said, I've got the guy on the wall, and I'm belaying him, and I'm holding him on the wall. And I said, I've got to be able to tie a knot, Prusik knot, into a clove hitch and anchor this line so it breaks him, and then I can go and climb to him and bring him down. I said, here's how it works. And we talked about this, and we showed them how to do it, getting shit done, right? And they're going, hey, sir, how does that work? And I said, I'm going to show you how it works.
I'm going to show you.
Yeah, and exactly what we did. We used it as an anchor point. Boom. Like I said, this is how. And it took a couple times because it's not easy with your non-prominent hand. And you don't have two hands to mess with. You just have the one. And then I said, there he is. He's anchored. I'm going to slack you. Slack the guy. He came down a little bit. And I said, now I have the ability to either go up and climb down or go from here, climb up and bring him down, which he didn't need. I said, but that's the demonstration. It's those kind of physical and mental challenges that people give you in a different environment where in some ways it's just as stressful.
Right.
Why? Because you still have to perform.
Right.
And those things were embedded. So from the infantry in Alaska to Norwich University, my next stop is where? Well, I wanted to become a Green Beret.
I was going to say, let's talk about what made you want to do that.
Well, it was...
Or was that just part of the process?
No, it was my boss that I worked for, and he was like a second father to me.
Okay.
A guy named Colonel Chikala, Jerry Chikala, who's just, he's gone now, but he was just a classic infantryman. I said, hey, I want to go to like the 101st or the 82nd. And the problem I had was I had already commanded a company, infantry company, as a first lieutenant in Alaska. It's normally an 03's job. I was an 02. I commanded a company for 13 months, relatively successful, not great, but okay. And I couldn't go back to the infantry again.
Right.
So I'm going, so what am I supposed to do? And he calls around and he says, you're right. I can't get you into the 82nd. And
why don't you become a Green Beret? It's easy. Everyone's doing it.
No, he says, but he hated them. That was the problem. He hated them. And so what I did is I filled out, unbeknownst to him, I filled out this postcard, dropped it in the mail. I come home, and again, we live in Northfield, Vermont, which is a tiny, I don't know if you've ever been there.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, it's a tiny little
I know exactly
town.
where it is.
Yeah. So our address was 7.5 South Main.
Yeah.
So we lived in this apartment, had been the barn, converted it to a beautiful apartment right across from the library. So, the school was a half a mile away. So we're at the school, it's springtime, and I come home, it's 8 o'clock at night. Again, this is 1984? Yeah, 1983, 84. I come home, my wife's on the phone, which is unusual. I go, hey, what's up? And we just got through doing a jump master brief. We're going to go down to Fort Devens and jump, with the cadets.
Right.
The airplane's here pretty soon. And she's on the phone, and she goes, hey, there's this guy from infantry branch, our detailer. You guys would call him detailers. Infantry branch. I go,
right.
There's this guy from infantry branch. It's 8 o'clock at night. So back then, we used to play these, these really complicated jokes on each other.
Right.
With fake orders and fun sites. and we'd find out that the wife didn't want to go to Okinawa or didn't want to go to Korea.
So you say this is where you're going.
Exactly.
Right.
So we'd come up with phony orders and let it go as far as we could until we wouldn't cause any divorces, but it would get ugly. In a fun, in a very, people used to be able to joke like that.
Yeah.
Remember those times? Anyway.
Remember those times, Justin, when people could just have fun?
Yeah. So I thought it was one of my buddies
messing
screwing with me.
Yeah, yeah.
So I get on the phone and I'm really abrasive.
Yeah, because you think it's it's Bobby.
Exactly. So I'm talking to this guy, and I go, yeah, hey, this is Captain Kerry Cray, and I go, yeah, okay.
It sure is. Yeah.
I go, okay.
Where do you want me to go?
I go, what do you want? I go, what do you want? He says, hey, I got this postcard. Do you want to go to Special Forces training in the summer? I go,
sure.
I do. Actually, I do. He said, okay. He said, do you want to be slated against a team leader position in Okinawa or at Fort Lewis, Washington? Well, my wife, during the summers, we'd have to go to ROTC camp at Fort Bragg.
Right.
And she had been out to Fort Lewis, Washington. I hadn't been there yet. And she'd already been out there and stayed with friends of ours who I thought was behind this whole thing.
Right.
And I'm going, and he goes, Fort Lewis or Okinawa? And I go, Fort Lewis. I said, hey, Fort Lewis? Oh, I thought the group was going to go to Hawaii. I go, no, it's not going to Hawaii, Okinawa or Fort Lewis. And she said, Fort Lewis is great. I said,
all this time you think this is a joke?
I do. I haven't come off that at all. So I'm playing along. So after this, he says, okay, so got you going to school in July, going to report to school in July, which gets me out of another summer camp, which I didn't want to go. I'm going to go to Bragg anyway. But
Right. And
then we're going to go to Fort Lewis, Washington, and I'm going to first group.
Yeah.
And I go, okay, who the fuck is this?
Yeah.
He goes, excuse me? I said, which one of my asshole friends put you up to, who is this?
Yeah.
Then he gets pissed at me. He says, look. I said, oh, by the way, why are you calling me at 8 o'clock at night? We're in the same time zone. This is not a mistake. This is like stupid.
Yeah.
And I said, which one of my asshole friends did this? And he goes, yeah, look, here's the deal. I spend all day dealing with your asshole friends who try to get into assignments they don't belong to or to get out of assignments they should go to. So I've got to fill requisites. This was a requisition. You want it or not? I said, well, look, man, you're giving me all three of my choices. Is this ever going to happen again? And he goes, not after this conversation. It is not. I said, I got it. I said, okay, so nobody put you up to this. This is real. He said, yeah, this is real. I said, what do I need? I've calmed down now.
Yeah,
he's calmed down.
Yeah, now you know it's real.
I said, okay, so what do I have to do? He says, good. here's what you need. You got to get a physical, you got to do a swim test, you got to do a PT test, go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Laundry list of shit you have to do.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So hang up, all good, feel good about it. Tell Kathy what's going on. She's happy about it. And I said, okay, but I got to get through the school. And, it's
not easy.
100 men test a day, only 3 win the Green Beret. I remember the song. Anyway, so just to make sure, that was a Thursday. That next Monday, I called his office.
Do you still think it might be a little bit of a joke?
I'm not convinced. Yeah, exactly. Good read, man. So in my effort to get shit done, I called up his office. He was not there, but he did work there. The numbers were good. And she goes, and the secretary says, because they're very good about keeping track of stuff, he has you down against, this, and you're going to get orders and everything's going to be fine. To go, good. So that was the motivation. And, the backstory to, hey, I want to go try that.
Right.
The good news was when we were in the Q course and I was getting ready to went through phase 1, which they've broken out. It's all very different now.
Right.
But in '84, they stopped doing it in the summer because out of Camp McCall, where we were, sent to for about 4 to 6 weeks, it was too brutal. They changed it after we went through. It's like when the joke is, I was in the last hard class.
Yeah.
That might have been true. I don't know. But they had a 5-day land navigation training, and you did long distance, like 40-some kilometers worth of movement day, night to find your little stakes, and you had to get the stakes right, and you had to make your times and carry your load. So we started with 278, and it was a mixed enlisted and officer course. They used to break them out differently.
Right.
They didn't do that until the second phase where you do your officer stuff, and then so the first phase you're all together. We started with 278. At the end of it, we graduated about 70-some guys.
Wow.
And so, they did wipe out a lot. So there's a 5-day land navigation, which is tested, and then the flip side, while half the other class is going through 5-day solo survival. Well, I had just got through teaching survival
so this is
in the Arctic, and I'm going, this is classic. I can do this shit. So, came through with that, and there was only like 2 of us that went through, and both of us were infantry officers because we'd had the background land navvying and doing all the other stuff.
Right.
First 2 guys, everybody else was out there for like 2 or 3 more days retesting and testing until we got down to the 70, and the other guys either got recycled and went back to the rest of the Army.
Right.
But you kind of go, hey, and I got to get through. So we're in the second phase now, getting the officer training, and they come to us at the very end of officer training, and they go, hey, and getting through the first phase means that you're going to get all the way through. The rest of it, not that you got to get seriously hurt.
Right.
So by that time, I get through phase 1 on the day. I call up my wife and I go, hey,
I'm making it.
I made it through phase 1. We got a 12-mile rucksack march tomorrow morning, and we got to jump after that to make sure your legs are okay, and then get about a 2 or 3 day break, and that's about it. I'm going to go into Moon Hall, and from there, I'm going to start phase 2, and then phase 3 exercise. We're all done in another 3 or 4 months. Okay, good, because I just, we'd bought a house out there. We sent her out there, bought a house. She completed the move. So the reason that's important is because she also gets shit done.
Right.
And when they came to me at the end of phase 2 and said, hey, you're going to first group. We need 5 guys from here to go to Okinawa. I said, can't go to Okinawa.
Yeah,
Why not?
I just moved.
I just moved.
Just
because the PCS move.
Yeah.
I go, hey, we just accepted all of our shit and completed the PCS move.
Right.
And they looked at me like, man. I go, yeah. Shit worked out, didn't it? And I go, yeah, it did.
Yeah, I got that phone call when I was in Norwich.
Guess what? So getting stuff done. Anyway,
so you graduate. You're now a Green Beret. And you're an officer, and you're going to be running a team. So you start progressing in your career, because a lot of times you hear this, even officers, they do their 20 and then they get out. Or they continue to make it a career and continue to excel. But at what point in your career, Or was there a point in your career that you were in a job or a position where you said, you know what, I love what I'm doing, but I'm going to make a career move and I'm going to go back into the civilian world? Or was it one of these things where, and I'll give you options on this question, obviously, or was it one of these options where you said, you know what, I've already made it this far, I'm doing good, and I'm going to keep excelling? Because 37 years, 3-star general, I mean, let's not kid ourselves. I can tell you there's never been one on my show.
Oh, wow. That's the case. You owe us a case of beer. Yeah. That's the first time for you. Yeah. I've been on podcasts before, by the way. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it.
No, that's a great question. I always appreciate multiple choice versus essay. So there were many times at Norwich, I was also doing consulting for Kaiser Aluminum.
Okay, yeah.
So I was allowed, and I got an ethics brief and did all that stuff. And I was allowed to go do leadership management development stuff I had learned while I was in Alaska about behavioral sciences and communication skills and all of that, which helped me be a better officer too. But also, I would go down there and help. Kaiser Aluminum was bringing back managers and workers together, and they needed help in getting these guys, the union and the management, to talk to one another again. So this friend of mine said, hey, here's what we pay you a day. Can you do this? And I said, I can do it on 4-day weekends, if I can make it work, but it can't be at, the exception of my real job. And I said, whatever you do not try and recruit me away to go do this full time.
Right.
He said, okay. So we did that like 3 or 4 iterations, made some good money. It was really good. I enjoyed the work, really liked it, said I was really good at it, and would I mind doing it full time, which he promised me he wouldn't do.
Right, of course.
So I go, of course, I was listening, So I'm supposed to go out for an interview, and this is it's counterintuitive to getting shit done. And I'm going, so you want me to come out and to the Kaiser Mead Works in, where is it? Oh, Spokane, Washington. Yeah. And they have an aluminum plant out there. He wants me to go out there full time and do this stuff. I said, okay. So we make arrangements to have this interview. I'm going to fly out there for the interview. They're going to pay me for all that, which is not the issue. The issue is to go check out to see, if I'm going to be suitable and they want me to do it. So I'm waiting. This is my first kind of look at how business works. Well, it doesn't, because I finally called the guy and I said, supposedly you want me to be out there next Tuesday, and it's Thursday. You should be telling me, again, this is 1980s, so remember, whether you're born then or not, I don't know.
I was.
Okay, good, I'm going.
I use Noxzema.
That's good. It was working, man. It was working for you. I should have, right? Anyway, I said, what's the deal? Oh, yeah, we were just about to call you. And what were you going to tell me in the phone call? He said, that schedules didn't work out and we need to reschedule. I said, no can do.
Yeah.
Because I've got all these other things going on.
Because I'm organized.
And I've got shit to do. So, and at that point, right when that happened, the phone rang and it was that 8 o'clock phone call. Like within about a week or so. It's just the dynamic of the universe messing with you. And I go, okay. So instead of getting out, I'm staying in. And I always wanted to try that Green Beret thing. I'm going to go do that.
Yeah.
And we were running like 12-minute 2 miles. And really, you're in a university. Yeah. What else you got to do besides be really fit? So mountain climbing, skiing, running, doing swimming. So I'm going to go be a Green Beret. So boom, off we go. So the joke around here with the guys that I've been with, off and on, like Ken Hurst, who's throwing this party here, one of the guys, is, in '84 is when I lost control of my calendar, where all of a sudden, I'm going, hey, I'm there. And before you know it, you're blinking. You go, well, I did that. I was on 2 teams and I commanded a company. Now I'm the battalion operations officer. And then I'm going to Command and General Staff College, and then, okay, after that, I'm going to go do my first joint assignment in Korea. And you're going, okay, after that, I go to the Joint Readiness Training Center. And then those jobs were critical because from Command and General Staff College, we had to go do joint training. It was, the big deal in the military, joint training. Yeah. So they came to us on the second half of the school year at Leavenworth, and they go, here's your electives. I said, aren't electives things that we choose? They go, yeah, not in this case, because the 1986 mandate of the Nunn-Cohen, the Goldwater-Nichols Act, was half of you guys are mandated to go into this course, and instead of going to the Joint Forces Staff College in Norfolk, you're going to do it here. So they actually saved us a move, but then of the 200 of us that were in this, 100 of us had to go to mandated joint billets.
Okay.
I was one of those guys. So I go, okay. So when you try to engineer your career, you fail.
Right.
And they engineer it for you. They actually do an honest job of going, okay, you're going to go here. So I went to Korea as a brand new, not a new major, but as a major.
Right.
And just had all the doctrinal stuff and tactics slammed down your brain and the joint stuff. And I go into exercise division, which is putting on these big, grandiose exercises like team spirit and a ultra-focused lens where you're doing either CPXs or FTXs, but they're large scale. And you're listening to the 3- and 4-star and component commanders as a young major. You're listening to them on how they conduct real land warfare.
Right.
And joint combined warfare with the Koreans against the North Koreans, maybe the Chinese, with the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the special operators, the whole thing. And you're going, I'm getting this phenomenal education. Well, I came out of there and went to the Joint Readiness Training Center, where you're now an observer controller. You're imparting all this doctrinal stuff on how it's supposed to be done to warfighters at the tactical end.
Right.
So I got a strategic view, an operational view, and now a tactical view at
Right.
JRTC.
You've got the triangle.
Yeah. Well, from JRTC, I go back to another joint billet because I didn't get selected right away for a battalion command.
Right.
And I'm going, well, you know, this is probably, I'll do my 20.
Right.
I'm not going to be a commander. I'm going to get out.
Right.
So I go to Hawaii. We go to Special Operations Command Pacific as a lieutenant colonel. And I knew most of the players because I'm a theater guy. I was a Pacific Rim guy at that point.
Right.
East Coast SEAL versus the West Coast SEAL, that whole thing. So I'm one of those guys. I'm out there. And while I'm out there, I get selected for command. But I get selected for command at Fort Bragg, a place that, I went for school, but had never been before.
Right.
But going from there, from the joint and what a theater special ops command does, that perspective as a lieutenant colonel, back to a battalion, I realized that I was one of the only guys that had that kind of, not one joint job already, but had two qualifying jobs. So I'm getting ready. So I go in to get my in-brief from my brand new 2-star as a battalion commander. Like on Fort Bragg, as a battalion commander, you're like a squad leader anywhere else.
Right.
You don't get housing, you don't get anything. You get a parking spot.
Right.
You hope somebody didn't pull in there by mistake. So you get nothing, right? So we go in there, and it's right around July 4th, and my family's coming up from Florida and all over for battalion command, change command.
Change of command.
Yeah, come on, man. Cool. So I'm talking to the 2-star, and he says, has anybody told you? Looking around the room like,
Yeah.
what?
Uh-oh.
Oh, so you're taking command in Port-au-Prince, Haiti.
Port-au-Prince, Haiti.
Because that's where your battalion is. I said, well, that makes sense, but no one told me until like a minute ago.
Yeah, until you.
I said, so, and it was at least a legitimate heads up that I could go back and tell my wife that, hey, have fun on the 4th of July events at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, because I will not be here.
Right.
So luckily, we had bought a house, closed on the house, moved into the house. These neighbors who sold us the house, the real estate agent, brought us a very fine meal, slept in my own bed, had it all put together, slept in my own bed, and got picked up at my house at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to the arms room to get my weapons to board a C5 that's going to Port-au-Prince and gone for 6 months.
Yeah.
And you go, okay.
And your wife's definitely GSDing because she's holding down the home.
Yeah, she is, and you know she does everything, but and there's always limits to this shit.
Yeah, right.
And the limit was, you're putting your own office together. I said, that is my domain.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
In the building, that is my domain. Got it. Just make sure I'll make sure the sergeant major knows the old guy gets his shit off my walls, right? They're mine now. So we do all that. And that the second time that I was thinking about leaving is at the end of my battalion command.
And how many years are you in at this point?
I'm at 21 years in.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for people that are listening that don't know that you can retire at 20, and each year that you go a little over, you get a little more percent towards your retirement, but also more money. There's more opportunity. There's a lot of other things.
Right. Yeah. And so the first guy I worked for, I had known. He had taken over the company that I commanded as a first lieutenant in Alaska. He was my replacement, and he was a very senior guy. He was my first group commander, a guy named Mark Boyette. And Mark and I were close, and he was really good, very forthright and straight, and got along fine. The guy who replaced him, not to be named.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I took him on, and in hindsight, in retrospect, if I had been that insubordinate to me, I would have fired me. Can you imagine how bad that has to be?
Yeah.
I mean,
well said.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of going, woo.
Yeah.
And I did it publicly, which is not good either.
Yeah, not
anyway,
good either.
So he tried to get rid of me a couple times.
What is it? Praise in public, discipline behind the scenes.
But
behind closed doors.
Yeah, I didn't do that well. Anyway, I was getting ready, and what I did is I wasn't ready to leave.
Right.
I mean, and we had done all the financial planning, and I could go get another job, but I really loved what I was doing. And one of my guys turned to me and he says, I said, I always aspired to be a battalion commander. He said, yeah, but you showed us what right looks like, and you led us really well, and you should think about doing this at the next level. You really should.
But you got to appreciate that, though, as a leader, when you have the people that are working with you or working for you, but you're a team, they're working with you.
Yeah.
And when they can give that compliment or that, I don't want to say advice, but it's advice in saying, you should really think about that, because out of respect, they're sharing. They don't want to work for someone else.
Right, and I think, and part of it also is goes
they understand
back to and the role modeling.
Right.
You go, this is what right looks like. Then you need to kind of proselytize this a little bit more.
Yeah.
And you go, I hadn't. Good point. The guy's name was. I talked about him in the Philippine briefing earlier this morning. I said, Lynn Ashley. I said, same. I said, you're right. I hadn't thought about that. I should. So at that point, I kind of, instead of bailing, which would have been easy to do, but the wrong thing to do.
Right.
And what happened was, we had been accused of losing a weapon.
Right.
Coming back from a place, we'd been accused of losing a weapon, which we found out later, many years later. Like, I only found out like 5 years ago that the armorer who had stored the weapon was actually selling them. And the FBI finally found the thing like many years later. And you go, oh, we took the heat for this.
Yeah.
And I protected my two captains who had done nothing wrong.
Right.
And I said, hey, I'm the, because again, this goes back to
you're the driver of the ship. You're the captain.
I am.
Yeah.
I am. I'm two things. I'm both responsible and accountable.
Correct.
So I said, and I told, I expected my group commander, the guy not to be named,
right,
to go in front of the two-star who's getting ready to shoot me with a spear in the chest, to stand in front of him and say, stop, I got this.
But he didn't.
He stepped aside.
Right.
He said, oh, there he is right there.
Yeah.
Make sure he's got a big chest at the time.
Yeah.
Throw it hard.
Yeah.
So what I did is I go, okay, so this guy is going to be no help. And matter of fact, because of our relationship or lack thereof,
right,
he'd love to tube me. So in Special Forces, the NCOs are critical. They run 95% of the show.
Right.
And my sergeant major...
NCO, for those listening, is a non-commissioned officer.
Yep. So my command sergeant major, that E9, if I'm an 09, he's an E9. Right. He's at the very top of the food chain. I go to him and I say, he says, because he came to me one day, he said, boss, do you know what you're doing? I said, yeah, I do. I said, I know I get one chance to fall on my sword because it's fatal. You can't reload, recog. I said, I didn't mean it. I said, I'm falling on my sword for those guys because I told you guys I would do anything for you.
Right.
And that's what I live. I said, so if I don't do this, I've got no reputation left.
Correct.
If I do this, it could be fatal, and I don't care.
Right.
Because that's what I told you I would do.
And 20 years later, the people that you did that for will tell that story with honor and dignity.
I suspect so.
100%.
But that's what I said. That's who I am.
Right.
I said, so Chris, Sergeant Major, I said, Chris, I know what I'm doing. I said, but here's what you can do for me. You can go to your Sergeant Major network here in Fort Bragg, and you can talk to the other command sergeant majors, like the guy who works for the 2-star, and say, you can have a guy like him, or you can have a guy like me. Who do you want to lead the formation in the future?
Right.
You all have a choice.
Your choice.
It's
your
exactly
choice.
it.
Yeah.
You all have a choice. So I planted that seed. I walked away, not knowing what I was going to do what's right no matter what, because that's who I am.
Right.
So I walk away.
It's embedded in you.
Yep. DNA. So 2 days later, I'm walking across this parade field, and this command sergeant major from the 2-star's office, a guy who happens to be, his actual name is Bill Rambo. He faced a lot of, and I know.
Justin, did you hear that?
Yeah. So Sergeant Major Rambo comes across the parade field, and he salutes me. And I go, hey, Sergeant Major, how you doing? He says, hey, boss would like to see you sometime. His 2-star.
Right.
My senior raider. And I go, okay. And I start walking away, and he's kind of looking at me. I go, oh, like, you mean like now?
Oh, now.
Now would be good,
Yeah.
he says. Sergeant Major, appreciate that. So we walk across the parade field, go into, they used to call it the Sniper Tower, 2929. I go to the second deck, which for those listeners is in the Army, it's the second floor.
Yeah.
Messing with you. Anyway.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay. So
I see what you did there.
Yeah. So
you're walking down the passageway and opening up the bulkheads.
Bulkhead, thanks.
Yeah.
So
we're having a little humor over here. It's just him and I.
Yeah, sorry. We digress. So we turn around, and I go in to see the boss, the 2-star, and I report and do all the right stuff. I'm professional, and he says, yeah. Special Forces, yeah. Sit down.
Right. Yeah, sit down.
So I sit down. He sits down, or I wait for him. He sits down. He hands me this letter, and it's this letter from my current group commander saying how much he'd like to kill me publicly. And he sent this, I've lost, a typical letter.
Yeah.
I've lost faith, trust, and confidence in this officer's ability, da-da-da-da. And I go, yes, sir.
Yeah.
I am not surprised here. I said, he says, so, and he leans forward, he puts the letter aside, he says, what's going on down there? And I'm going, so now you're caught in a loyalty game.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I go, okay. And he looks at me like, cut the crap. I go,
Keep it
okay.
real. Keep it real.
Yep. And I said, okay. And I told him the whole deal. I told him what's really going on. And he goes, yep, okay. He says, look, a couple things. First thing is the investigation of the weapon and all that's done. He says, here's all the letters of reprimand. They're yours. Shred them, frame them. They're not going anywhere. I said, are the captain's letters in there? Yes, they are. Good. That's all I cared for. He says, don't care what you do with them. Not going any further. Done. He says, there's other things going on here that you don't know about. You need to get in here. You have a new job. When do you want to change battalion command? I said, well, I can't change until such and such because he's on travel. Oh, no, he's not.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, he's not. I said, well, I would like to be the first guy that uses the brand new parade field that we just installed. This Dick Meadows, who's a Shadow Warrior guy.
Right.
We just installed, Ross Perot had just built a statue of this guy. And Dick Meadows was one of the first Delta guys, longtime Mac VSAW guy. Anyway, died of cancer, I think, many years ago. But they put a statue up of him in the plaza, in this Meadows Plaza. I go, I want to be the first guy that changes command out there.
Yeah, why not?
He said, we can do that. I said, how about the 10th? It's like the 5th of June. I said, how about the 10th? About a week from now.
Yeah,
He said,
we got time to make this all happen.
I said,
5 days.
yeah, we can get shit done, right?
Yeah.
So I said, but I can't get the band, the 82nd band. He said, I can get the band. I said, but my boss is on travel, like I said. He goes,
Yeah.
no, he's
No,
not.
no.
I said, okay. So, but he also said, you can stay in command as long as you want until your date. I said, yeah, but he will just hold the entire battalion hostage
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
screw with us no end. I said, I'm not going to put the guys through that.
Yeah.
Not fair to them.
Yeah.
He said, okay. And then he does all that. He actually does all that. It's phenomenal. I mean, he delivered. And this guy did not have a great reputation in the force. But when I saw him later on working with the State Department, he always had time for me.
Yeah.
I mean, and a wonderful human being, which is not necessarily the reputation that he kind of lived with at the time. But
Right.
I walked away feeling very different about him and his heart and where it was all at. Came out of command and go work for my boss, who was the former group commander, who I got along with famously.
Yeah.
I walk into his office, and I'm now the assistant deputy director for operations for the 3-star U.S. Army Special Operations Command.
Right.
Okay. And it's normally a former battalion commander's job, so
Right.
I've been slated against that. I walk in to see my new boss. He gets up, closes the door, and he says, I've got serious cancer. I've got to go into treatment for about the next 7 to 9 months.
Oh, shit.
You're here because you're going to run this. I go, oh,
Yes, sir.
things are going on here, aren't they? He goes, yeah. I said, that's what General Beauray was talking about. He goes, yeah. He said, so I'll be in and out, but it's yours. You run this, okay? You know how to do it. It's good.
We trust you.
Yeah. And you're competent. And you
Yeah.
go, okay. So I figured, hey, I'm a staff guy. Everybody's news is bad news but mine. I mean,
Yeah.
they're in command. I mean,
Yeah.
we'll get all that. So now I'm working for a 3-star who had come out of JSOC, Joint Special Ops Command,
Right.
those guys, guy named Pete Shoemaker. So Pete Shoemaker built his life and his world in the Delta JSOC
Yeah.
model. Not many people know him, but now I'm his assistant desk ops, but I'm really his acting
Yeah.
desk ops,
You're
ops
kind of-
officer.
yeah, yeah.
And it's normally a full colonel, senior service college, former group or 06 level commander.
Right.
I'm none of those things.
Right.
And I'm barely holding on to being a 05, right? Based on the report I'm going to get. Yeah, here we go.
We're going to shred.
Yeah, exactly. So, long story short, I do that for 9 months. The good news is the guy who had cancer has been in complete remission.
Okay,
Went
great.
through that. And now Shoemaker, at the very end of all this, Shelton gets promoted to go be the chairman of the Joint Staff. He was at SOCOM. Shoemaker gets tapped right away to go be the new 4-star command down at SOCOM.
And then
So
leaves a window for you.
so the 3-star who comes in behind him takes command. I don't think anything more of it until I get a phone call one day from Branch. The same detailers call me.
Right.
And the guy calls me and he says, hey, you want to go to you're slated for your alternate for War College this year? He said, yeah, probably going to be a primary next year. And then he goes, do you want to go to school in London for a year as War College? I said, when's it start? He says,
Wednesday.
kind of. It's happened before, mostly with back surgery.
And by the way, today's Tuesday.
Yeah, that's a different story. But yeah, that's a back surgery story at Walter Reed. Anyway, he says it starts in December. So am I late? He said, no. It starts next year for you in December. Your family moves in December in 1998 for school year 99. I go, well, what am I supposed to be doing until then? And he goes silent and he goes, oh, didn't the third deck tell you? I go, no. What were they going to tell me? He said, I got another call.
Yeah, I got to go.
I got to go. So I go, okay.
Yeah.
So, but before he hangs up, he says, but I need your decision by Monday.
Right. Of course.
I go, for the school a year from now.
Yeah.
He goes, yeah.
Yeah.
I said, okay.
Yeah.
So
Going to London, honey.
I go, okay. So I go upstairs. I go, hey. And there was a colonel there who I'd worked with at Norwich,
Yeah.
who's the chief of staff for the general, the new 3-star. And I go, hey, there's something you want to tell me? What do you mean? I said, I just got off the phone with Branch. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, oops.
Yeah, we were just going to call you. You guys, come on. Okay, so what's the deal? They go, well, we want you to go to school in London a year from now. I said, so what am I supposed to do between now and then? Well, you're going to get promoted to 06, to colonel. You're all around the promotion list. We know that.
Right.
I said, okay, that's interesting. And the board and those boards had met, so all true.
Yeah, you're good.
But he says, we're going to frock you. Well, they don't frock. They frock for joint jobs. They don't frock for Army jobs.
Right.
So I go, what do you mean you're going to frock me? They go, yeah, you're going to be the desk ops for the next 9 months for General Tagny. I said, really? I said, but I'm not this. He says, yeah, but you'll be a colonel. You'll command sooner or later at the 06 level.
Right.
And you'll go to senior service college after you do this. He says, but you've been doing the job for the last 9 months. And the guy that we're worried about being able to answer to is General Shoemaker at SOCOM.
Yeah.
You know how he functions. You know,
Yeah.
you want the job or not?
Yeah, you got this.
No, actually, then the new 3-star came across the hall and he says, hey, Frido, how you doing? I said, hey, sir, I'm well. And I look at, Mitchell. I go, you going to tell him or I going to tell him? And he says, yeah, so-and-so just called, Colonel Fridovich to tell him. Well, and Tagny kind of cuts through all the crap. He says, don't you want to go to school in London? I hear it's a great experience. And he go, okay, so nothing about the job.
Right.
And he finally tells me, he says, look, you've been doing the job. This has all been built for you to do this job. You want the job? I go, I do want the job. He said, okay, the job's yours. Well, the flip side is the guy who was coming out of command, who I didn't get along with, thought he was going to get the job.
Right.
Until I had the opportunity to tell him where I was going to go. He came in for something.
Right.
Actually, he was coming in for a fit rep, an OER review with the 3-star, the new 3-star.
The new 3-star, right.
And he says he was going to go there for OER counseling and for what he was going to go do next. And right before he went in there, he stopped me in the hall. And he was also a personnelist, so he knew all these different games. And he says, hey, so what are you going to do next? I said, I'm going to senior service college in the Royal College of Defense Studies in Belgrave Square in London. Oh, that's phenomenal. That's really hard to get into. I go, yeah, got all that. Thanks. Don't need, don't even like being around a guy.
Yeah.
And then he says, so what are you doing until then?
Taking your job.
I said, I just found out that I'm going to be the desk ops. And a look on his face.
It was priceless.
It was. It was only better when he had an office call with me when I was a 3-star at SOCOM. and he was a strap hanger. He wasn't even the guy I wanted to talk to. It's hilarious. Anyway.
I love it.
It was interesting. If you do the right thing happens. And that's kind of
and that's actually the moral of that story is if you do the right things will happen. And you fell on the sword because and when I say you fell on the sword, you allowed that to happen because you knew as a good leader you were not going to just pass the buck to
couldn't do it.
Your team. You said it's not possible. I will take the pain. I will do what I have to do. I was also looking in here. It says you were one of the excuse me. I'm saying this wrong because of the way it's written. But you were when you retired. You were the most senior Green Beret person in the Army, or one of. Yeah. These are some everyday GSD stuff. But I do want to touch on a couple things. Before we.
Sorry, long story, man.
No, that was a great story, and I think the listeners are going to love it because obviously you went on and you became a 3-star general, and you had the opportunity to, see that look on that individual's face again, and hopefully his career he got what he was supposed to get.
He did.
Yeah.
But I also think, there are some guys who go through life that really believe, I'm going to be a GO.
Right.
I'm going to be a general officer.
Right.
I'm going to be a flag.
Right.
I never believed that.
Right.
Matter of fact, after you've lived that life and you've kissed that ring and, and you kind of go, wow. I mean, it's about, and I think the guy who said it best was General Shinseki. So I was a brand new brigadier when they bring you all in, your cohort of the other 20-some or 40 guys and gals that they make 1-stars.
Right.
First thing he says, congratulations. Second thing he says, look to your left, look to your right. Only 50% of you ever go beyond 1 star. By law, it's the way it is.
It's just the way it is. It's the amount of people.
It's the pyramid.
Yeah.
And he says, 2 stars, your last permanent rank, and after that, you're in temporary positions. And if you're allowed to retire as a 3 or 4 stars because you served honorably and you had the appropriate amount of time at whatever rank.
Right.
But he says, but they tell you that right up front.
Right.
And you go, okay, that's important to know.
Yeah.
And there was nothing ever in my mind that would make me believe that I would be a GO.
Right.
I'm not of that pedigree. I'm not a West Point guy.
Right. When you were sitting in Norwich years before, you weren't thinking you were going to be a 3-star general.
I was going to do what they asked me to do until either I couldn't do it
you were
physically.
Still doing pranks with your buddies about
exactly.
orders.
Kind of fake, fake orders. Give me that fun site. See if we can get him to move his stuff.
I mentioned to you before the show. I said, obviously you've written a book, and you laughed and you said no, and then I said, are you going to write a book? And you made a good comment, you said you should write a book about not writing a book, I think is what you said.
Yeah.
But if you did write a book, what would it be on?
It would. I think mostly it would be about probably a lot of the characters that I've met. That's when I made the comment about historical fiction.
Right.
Where it might, I've read a lot of that lately, and it's dressed up enough where you go, I get who
following it.
I get who they're talking about, but I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably the lawyers look at it and go, yeah, you can get away with. No, you can't.
Yeah.
Give the guy hair. Don't make him completely bald.
Yeah.
Okay.
His name is Mr. Magoo.
Yeah, exactly. So shouldn't be driving anyway.
Right.
So yeah, those kind of things. But it would be about characters because, and people. I mean, I spent some time with a real good 4-star, former SOCOM commander, and he brought me along very nicely. It wasn't Shoemaker, it was somebody else. But he sat me down before I retired and said, here's what's going to happen to you when you're on the outside. And it was all about character and integrity.
Right, it's so important.
Go, yeah. And I go, oh. And sure enough, no matter how many times they warn you, and I had people tell me that when I was like a major lieutenant colonel,
right.
If and when you ever get out, here's what's going to happen.
Right.
And you go,
true.
They won't do that. And then you go, oh, they do that. You go, oh, you pieces of dirt. And that's just the way it is. And you go, it was just miserable. It would be along those lines about those lessons learned about really, intuitively, we know the right answer.
Yeah.
So whenever you have to ask yourself for permission to do something, you already know.
You already know the answer.
Shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's well said right there.
Yeah.
I do want to touch on one thing though, because you mentioned this before the show too, and I think it's huge because I'm really good with it. A lot of people aren't, but time management.
Yeah.
What's your thought process?
Well, the first thing is I am a big believer in the military decision-making process, the old MDMP where you do the 17 different steps you need to do. But the first step is, when do we have to do the first action? When do we need to be where? What's our sense of purpose? What's our direction? And what's our sense of urgency to get going? So I need to know if I've got to start briefing back a plan or to get approval for plan, what's my reverse planning sequence get my brain. So case in point, I commanded in Bosnia a special operations task force, and it was combined in joint. So I had all the different services, and I had 8 different NATO countries,
right?
All special operators. I had the German KSK, I had the Norwegian Special Forces, I had a bunch of Brits, French, Spanish, Italians, Americans, the whole slew. It was wonderful.
Right.
And really, I mean, in a lot of ways, you know, it was a good. I had to spend 6 months there in Bosnia, in Sarajevo, and around the country. I had to do that before I took command of this first Special Forces group. So, and they knew if I put me in some staff job, I ended up killing somebody.
Right.
So,
yeah,
better I go do this. So, I did that, and as I'm flying, I studied the place, as you might imagine. You know, kind of understood the war, understood what was going on, and I'm going okay. And I also looked at the weather. And I realized that they had had the most severe snowfall in the region in about the last 40 or 50 years, since about World War II. And I go, so they can't start killing themselves again until mid-February, early March. I get there in mid-January. I've got 6 weeks before shit starts happening again.
Right.
That I need to understand as much as I can, meet as many of these personalities, and get after what we're going to do for the next 6 months and how we want to shape and reframe this thing so we can move it forward.
Putting your plan together.
Yep. And you got a pickup team, and they're not used to hard work. And the guy I replaced is a guy who was there at the party and do a bunch of other stuff. And I go, and the reason, I mean, he had lost. One of the guys got drunk and was following an interpreter, a female interpreter, across into Belgrade, into Serbia, and a bunch of other weird, terrible shit.
Yeah.
Lack of leadership. And I go, he was supposed to be there for a year, so I got a phone call when we were living in London. Same kind of thing. First thing is, hey, congratulations, you're going to go command a group. I go, that's phenomenal news, thanks. Oh, by the way, when the 3-star calls you, act surprised. I said, okay. This was the third call I got. The next call I got was
act surprised.
Yeah, act surprised. Oh, hey, sir, that's great news. Oh, who told you already? No, I can't. Anyway, another phone call I got was from a very good friend. He says, would you consider an operational assignment for 6 months? I said, I would.
Yeah, for sure.
I said, yeah, exactly. You always say yes, right? And then you say where and when. And he goes, just checking. He says, but the general, who I just got through working for, Tagney, he's going to call you and then ask you what you want to do. I said, perfect. I said, but what happened to the guy who's over there? He's there for a year. He goes, yeah, you've probably been following, because I was in London. I heard all the stuff coming from Europe. He said, yeah, he's had some run of real bad luck. And I said, okay. I said, I'll tell General Tagney I'll do it. I said, okay. So the phone rings a week later. And, it wasn't about the command. It was about, hey, it wasn't about, being selected. It was about, will you go there? And I go, yes, sir, I will. He says, so where do you want to move your family? I said, probably better, because they had a black mission going on over there, and I didn't want my family still in London.
Right.
I wanted them all the way across the ocean and a continent apart, since we knew we were going to Fort Lewis, Washington, to go into quarters there. Yeah. So I promised my wife that before I left for this 6-month assignment, I would get my wife, my daughter settled in where we were going to live for the next. They lived there for 2.5 years, and I lived there for 2 years, and it worked out extremely well. But I knew that, and I wanted to get them settled so I wouldn't be conflicted.
Right.
Are they okay?
Yeah, you don't want to be distracted at this point.
Not at all. So when I got on the ground, these guys were not used to someone like me coming in and going, hey, I don't care if you work here or not. I will get your ass out of country. Yeah. Because the guy I was working for was a very close friend. And if I was going to cut somebody off, I was going to cut somebody off, and he was going to support me.
Right.
And he did.
That's
absolutely
awesome.
Too. So I got in there. We did this analysis, and I said, here's what I want. Figure it out. We're going to go brief the 3-star. We're going to go brief the 1-stars, whoever we need to brief. We're going to get this done. And we use that as, we called it a horse blanket, because when we put all the different decision points and timelines and everybody else's input, it looked like this big monster, but it worked out extremely well. And that was the one part where you go, meteorologically, having a meat talk or a weather debt with you,
right,
and understanding what's going on the ground and the impact it has on people and the opportunity that presents, or lack thereof. It didn't present opportunities for them to kill each other, but it gave us opportunity to get ahead of them,
right,
and to be forward thinking and to be able to get things done right then.
GSD.
And not kind of sit on and go, we're going to wait for the snow and melt, see what these guys do. No,
you were ready.
Yeah, we were. And so that to me was just kind of another one of those telling processes and mission analysis that you have to know where you are in your timeline.
Right.
So somebody asked me.
Yeah, it goes back to time management.
It does.
100%.
Yeah, this guy, I hadn't seen for a couple of years, and he was one of my NCOs when I was like a captain. And, we're talking, he says, hey, are you working a lot now? I go, no, I'm not working much at all. I said, why not? I said, well, I'm old. I said, it's not like my brain's not working. I think my brain's okay. I said, I think the issue is I don't have much time left.
Right.
I don't know that I'm dying from something, but I know that I might have 20. Yeah. I might be lucky 10. I mean, part of my family died in their 60s.
Right.
I was happy to get past that. The other side of my family, genetically, my mom lived until she was 90, 93. I go, okay. Now, am I taking better care of myself? Sure. But I know my timeline is really limited.
Yeah.
I mean, if I look at my timeline, and then, of course, you have these sad stories about these people in your neighborhood. And we live in a very active neighborhood.
Right.
It's very outdoorsy, very, they play golf. I don't do that shit.
Right.
Anyway.
Golf is so not GSD.
It is not. Thank you. Thank you for that. That's great.
It's so true.
But someone does take care of the yard behind my house. The lawn looks great. Anyway, living in the desert, doesn't matter. So, but these guys, they're all fit, but then you hear these stories, and this happened right before I came here.
Yeah.
They're walking their dog.
Just died.
The guy, he just dies. And you go,
over. His time was up.
What the hell?
Yeah.
What a bad sense of humor God has,
Yeah.
Because that's how you know how to make God laugh, right? Tell him your plan. He'll go, oh, yeah, you think that's going to happen? No, man, not going to happen at all.
Oh, shit.
So people go, because egos are fragile, and people always like to tell you all the different shit that they're doing. And you go, yeah, I get it. I said, but what I tell people is I don't need the money. Unless it's something really unique that I've got certain skills and experiences behind that you think you can be leveraged to make you better.
Right.
Go ask somebody else needs to work.
Yeah.
I don't need the work.
Well, I can tell you, I think the people listening to this show, this specific episode, are going to be extremely motivated because, I'm gonna go back in a little bit of time from prior to you even going to Norwich, when you were in Alaska, when you made a decision to go in the Army after college and, making your career path all the way to a 3-star general. You have been truly getting shit done all along this path. And you can laugh and be like, oh, but just my job. And that's but it's an honor to have you on the show. I feel like we could talk for hours because I can imagine the stories that you could continue to.
There's shit out there. Yes, there is.
Yeah, there's tons. And I will say, if you ever do write the book that you're potentially talking about, maybe writing, I'd love to have you back on the show to promote the book or to dissect the book, and we can laugh about the characters.
That would be, any one of those situations would be wonderful.
Yeah, and until then, I wish you the best, sir, and thank you so much for being on the show. And I do have a gift for you.
What a great opportunity.
It's a little Everyday GSD shirt that I give my guests that truly get shit done. And not only did you've deserved this, but you've earned it over many, many years of service. And to say that I've sat across from a 3-star general, 37 years, Green Beret, it's an absolute honor, sir. Thank you for being on the show.
Pleasure's mine. Really enjoyed myself. And I'd rather have the T-shirt than rush out and get a tattoo.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching the Everyday GSD podcast. Episodes come out on the 1st and 15th of the month. If you want to watch people or listen to people that Everyday GSD, please download and subscribe wherever you listen or watch the Everyday GSD podcast. Everyday GSD.